Hello friends! On May 12th, there are only a few hours left on the calendar until the ultimatum issued by Europe, the United States and Ukraine to the Russian President Vladimir Putin to cease fire for 30 days expires. Based on recent news, it is clear that sanctions will not be imposed at midnight today. Instead, extensive negotiations are set to take place in Istanbul on May 15th, because today the American President Donald Trump announced that as part of his trip to the Persian Gulf countries, he now plans to also fly to Istanbul, where the meeting between Putin and Zelensky will take place. According to Trump, he is confident that both Putin and Zelensky will be in Istanbul, and he will join them there as well. But here, the puzzle of everything that's happening is starting to come together. Because, to put it very briefly, let me remind you that literally a week and a half ago, Donald Trump stated that he would ask Recep Tayyip Erdogan to be a mediator in these negotiations. At that time, we were still unaware the events would happen on May 15th. After that, it became known that due to such a strange coincidence, it is precisely in Turkey that an informal summit of NATO representatives will be held from the 13th to the 16th of May. And United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio is flying there. When Putin announced that he wanted negotiations on the 15th of May in Istanbul, the French Foreign Minister Barrot stated that Europe also wants to be present at these negotiations. And today, in addition to all this, after Zelensky's statement that he will fly to Istanbul on the 15th of May no matter what, the American President Donald Trump says that he will also join these negotiations. And in fact, we end up with a situation where the entire Western coalition will be present in Istanbul on the 15th of May, where Putin, as if, invited everyone for negotiations. Therefore, Putin will have to somehow get out of this situation. Of course, in the Kremlin, they say that it is impossible to talk to us in such an ultimatum-like manner. But Trump insists that he made every effort to ensure that these negotiations on the 15th of May took place. I will be cautious in my assessments and admit that behind-the-scenes negotiations were indeed taking place between Washington and Moscow. That's when Steve Witkoff flew to Moscow to actually conduct such negotiations in Istanbul. Therefore, very serious, if not historic, negotiations are scheduled to take place in Istanbul on May 15th. And now let's go through all the insider information that surfaced today regarding the organization and conduct of these negotiations. Well, and what should we expect from them? I'm Alexei Pechi. Today is May 12th. Let's review everything step by step. Before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, click the bell, give a like, and don't forget to leave a comment. This is also very important so that the algorithms spread this video to a larger number of viewers. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, it's called, and the link to it is in the description of this video, or you can use the quick response code on your screens. There, throughout today, I published all the news regarding the upcoming negotiations in real time, you could say. That's why. Subscribe to the Telegram channel, news comes out there more promptly. Well, here on YouTube, we already do a main summary of the day's news. Let's review everything sequentially. As Donald Trump stated today, a possible meeting between Ukraine and Russia on Thursday, May 15th should lead to good results. The bloodshed must be stopped. Well, as Donald Trump states, it was he who insisted that this meeting should take place. And after that, Trump tells us that he also plans to fly to Istanbul, and he is confident that both Putin and Zelensky will be there. Let's review the situation step by step in chronological order. Today, May 12th, since early morning, Europeans have been talking about the fact that the ultimatum regarding the 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine expires today. Putin doesn't have much time left. And today, during the day, for example, the representative of the German government, Stefan Cornelius, stated that time is running out and Russia must agree to an unconditional 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine by the end of this day. Otherwise, there will be sanctions. As he stated, if Moscow does not meet the demands, preparations for new sanctions will begin. I'll pause here for a moment regarding the sanctions and explain what's happening. The thing is, right after that, the French President Emmanuel Macron also stated that Western countries had set a deadline for Russia to respond to the proposal for a 30-day ceasefire. If this doesn't happen, sanctions against the aggressor will be strengthened, according to Macron. Today I will speak with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and my European colleagues. We set the framework, everything is clear. And what next? He recalled that the head of the Ukrainian state agreed to an unconditional ceasefire with Russia for 30 days after the corresponding proposal from the United States. Simultaneously, on May 11th, Zelensky expressed willingness to negotiate with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin in Istanbul. This is already the second time, according to Macron, that the president of Ukraine has made serious concessions. Quote, "Now we all have to be reasonable. Either Russia, Mr. Putin, is serious and wants peace, or this is not serious and we need to impose even more sanctions." Let me pause here for a moment regarding the sanctions. The demand to cease fire even before the start of direct Russian-Ukrainian peace talks was put forward by Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Poland and Ukraine on Saturday during a meeting of the leaders of these countries in Kyiv. Trump also supported this idea and stated that yes, let's move forward along this track. Germany and France have declared that Russia has until the end of the day to act or face sanctions. But here we need to look at the situation realistically. 3 of the countries that issued the ultimatum are members of the European Union. By themselves, they do not approve sanction policies at the European Union level, but these 3 countries are still the driving force of the European Union. This refers to France, Germany and Poland, and they can initiate processes within the bloc. As a result, no sanctions will be imposed at midnight. Kaja Kallas, the head of Euro diplomacy, stated, "We must pressure Russia to genuinely desire peace and negotiate with Ukraine." Hence the statement from Chancellor Merz's office that Russia must agree to an unconditional 30-day ceasefire. If Moscow rejects the demands, preparations for new sanctions will commence. The crucial term is preparation. But there are also the United States of America, which even without the approval of the Union of 27 countries can impose sanctions against Russia. And here, in my opinion, is the most important thing. That is, this is the essence of all the recent activity. The point was to finally make Trump start to understand that Putin does not want peace, that Putin is trying to buy time, and that Putin needs to be pressured. If Trump gives the go-ahead, as you understand, even Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, will be forced to go have a coffee when the European Union is voting for a new package of sanctions against Russia. After that, the spokesperson for the Russian dictator Dmitry Peskov took the stage and stated that the Kremlin does not accept ultimatums regarding a truce with Ukraine and insists on resuming direct negotiations in Istanbul without preconditions. Peskov reacted this way to Europe's threats to impose additional sanctions against Russia if it does not agree to a 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine. He boldly stated that supposedly you cannot speak to Russia in the language of ultimatums. Next is a quote from Peskov. "Such a language of ultimatums is unacceptable for Russia. It does not fit. You cannot talk to Russia in such a tone." Then he emphasized that Russia is ready for negotiations in Istanbul without any preconditions. As you know, the president of Russia made a statement. In this statement, in particular, our position regarding the resumption of direct negotiations in Istanbul without any preconditions is clearly and unambiguously stated. Those very same direct negotiations that were interrupted by the Ukrainian side in 2022. Next, a representative of the Russian dictator added that the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, confirmed in a phone conversation yesterday his readiness to do everything possible to organize negotiations between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul. That's all I can say on this topic for now, Dmitry Peskov summarized. So, in this way, Peskov actually rejected the proposal for a 30-day truce between Ukraine and Russia. And here comes the next information leak that after the announcement that he would fly to Istanbul on May 15th, Zelensky is personally waiting there for the dictator Putin. The leak was that after this statement, it became known that Zelensky would fly to Istanbul in any case. Even if a ceasefire is not reached today, that is, whether it is reached or not, he is still going to Istanbul. This is where things start to get really interesting as we begin to put the pieces of the puzzle together. The thing is, Donald Trump is making a very loud statement today and says that supposedly the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine on May 15th are very important. And he kind of put in every effort to make sure they would take place, hinting that it was specifically the American president's administration that was conducting such behind-the-scenes negotiations to organize this kind of negotiation format. Here, I remind you that over the past 2 weeks, the entire Trump team, some were hinting, others were saying directly that they want to bring everything to the point where Ukraine and Russia will sit down directly across from each other and start talking to each other. We will see. Yes, if the dialogue works, we will help. If not, we can leave these negotiations. After that, as is known, Trump is heading tomorrow on May 13th to the countries of the Persian Gulf, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Qatar. I have a separate video on this topic on my channel. I recommend watching it. It's very interesting there, what kind of relations are currently developing between the United States and the Middle East. And there he will be from the 13th to the 16th of May. And then suddenly today, Trump holds a press conference and announces that he is considering the possibility of flying to Istanbul, where a meeting between Russia and Ukraine may take place on Thursday. And then he adds that he believes both Putin and Zelensky will also be there. Now we are assembling the puzzle pieces. The first thing we should focus on is Trump has long stated that he wants to involve Recep Tayyip Erdogan in the negotiation process as a mediator. Erdogan said he is ready to provide a platform for such talks. And today, Turkey announced the possibility of a meeting between Ukraine and Russia today. Turkey's Foreign Affairs Minister Hakan Fidan announced, and I quote, "Our stance on the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia has been clear from the start. Our president has repeatedly stated this. Turkey is trying to fulfill its role with all its institutions." And further, he recalled that last week President Erdogan of Turkey had an intensive diplomatic schedule. In particular, he spoke with United States President Donald Trump, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Russian President Vladimir Putin. He believes Turkey must be central to these negotiations. Quote, "For us, it's important to have peace and stability in our region. I believe that the parties will reach a compromise in the coming days. Both sides are trying to enlist the support of the United States. We invite them to a prompt ceasefire." And further, that is, we understand everything. Turkey is ready. Turkey held these negotiations with 3 countries, the United States, Europe, and Russia. And Turkey is ready to organize this platform for negotiations. Zelensky says he will go to Istanbul, regardless of whether a ceasefire is reached today, May 12th. After that, the French Foreign Minister, Jean-Noël Barrot, states that Europe also wants to be at the negotiating table in Istanbul. Europeans will also be in Istanbul on May 15th for reasons I'll explain later. Let's move on. The guest is the Secretary of the United States of America, Marco Rubio, who, by coincidence, will be in Turkey during this period for an informal meeting of NATO diplomats. That's why I'm saying that Europeans will be there too. Well, it just so happened, that's how the circumstances turned out, that everyone will be in the same place. Trump is also planning to visit Istanbul. Earlier in Washington, I want to note, there were such rumors that during Donald Trump's visit to the Middle East, a meeting with Putin might be possible. Later, Trump denied this possibility, saying, "I'm not sure there will be such a meeting." And now Trump is talking about the fact that he is considering a trip. Next, I quote Donald Trump, "I'm thinking about a trip to Istanbul. I believe that Putin and Zelensky will be there." Trump also believes that Russia will agree to a 30-day ceasefire, but only during the negotiations in Istanbul. So, we're putting the puzzle together and realizing that the Europeans, the American leadership, and the Ukrainian leadership will be in Istanbul on May 15th. Trump could actually still easily be in the Persian Gulf countries during this period. He will be in the United Arab Emirates on the 15th. It would be easy for him to quickly head to Istanbul from there to hold negotiations. Additionally, he will visit Qatar on May 16th, and Qatar is now taking a maximally mediating position in several conflicts around the world, so this also works in Qatar's favor. That means everyone will be there. Putin is afraid to fly to Istanbul. In the Kremlin, they hint that diplomats should handle the negotiations, but Trump believes that Putin will still come to Istanbul. So, if the entire Western elite is gathering in Istanbul, Russia has no choice but to enter into dialogue. Vague, if Putin doesn't fly to Istanbul, Trump might get offended because he insists that it's his achievement. Esport. Trump said, "The Russia-Ukraine meeting on Thursday is very important. I insisted it take place. Something good can come out of it. Therefore, I admit that this could really be a chance to pressure Putin, unless Trump, of course, saves him. Because on Ukraine's side, there is simply such a diplomatic armada. Europe, the United States of America, and at the level of leaders. Erdogan will play the role of mediator. The Chinese won't come to Istanbul to support Putin. That's why there is a real chance to start pressing Putin to the wall. Plus, this whole story with the sanctions actually looks like a sword hanging over him, as if to say, if you don't agree, then we'll strike you with it. So I admit, again, I'm being cautious in my statements. I admit the possibility that this meeting in Istanbul on the 15th of May had been in preparation for quite some time, specifically in the Washington-Moscow negotiations. And Putin simply voiced what had already been agreed upon much earlier. If we put the pieces of the puzzle together, we see that the picture really does come together, and we understand that preparations for this had already been underway for a long time. Therefore, now, in the next 2 days, on the 13th and 14th of May, there will be a lot of contradictory statements, but on the 15th, a lot could be decided. If Putin gets scared and doesn't fly to Istanbul, Trump might decide that he doesn't want anything, that he's just being led on. If Trump is already saying that he wants to fly to Istanbul to meet with Putin and Zelensky, and Putin suddenly chickens out and doesn't go, it will look very weak. Putin was the first to shout about offering negotiations. Well, here's his chance. So friends, I'll leave it at that for now. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode.